I've played over 100 hours of Cyberpunk 2077 now. I'm a huge CDPR fan, I love the Witcher series, and I was pretty much exclusively bought into the hype for this game, but in my experience, Cyberpunk 2077 is the embodiment of the good, the bad, and the ugly. This video is sponsored by my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/NorZZa. I'm actually in the process of redesigning a lot of my alerts and overlays, so if that interests you, why not stop by and check it out? So let's start with the good. I played Cyberpunk 2077 on PC with an RTX 2080 and an AMD 3080 XT, and sadly for this review, my PC specs are kind of more important than any other aspect of this game. The PC experience is significantly better than console. In my experience though, from the moment that you see Night City, the busy streets, the mega buildings, the detail spread throughout the world of Night City, it's amazingly detailed. It's an absolute credit to CD Projekt Red that they can make each district feel different, that you know when you've moved into a different suburb of the city. For such a large and dense environment, exploring Night City never feels like a copy and pasted street, and every street has a name, which is just an incredible amount of detail that the developers have put into this game. Night City is beautiful day or night, with the neon lights, the amazing shadow and lighting work. The implementation of ray tracing truly feels like a different experience when it's turned on. In a lot of games, you can barely notice the difference. However, Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the first games that there is a clear, noticeable difference between ray tracing on and ray tracing off. I cannot wait for a couple of years when hardware surpasses this game and we can run every setting on Psycho and see how far we can really push it. The level of detail isn't just found in the streets, but also in the cutscenes and the characters you meet along the way. One of my favorite things about RPGs is dialogue systems and conversations, and Cyberpunk 2077 is doing something we've never seen before with these cutscenes and set pieces. Every conversation you have complete control over your camera. You can interact with the person you're talking to, and on the occasion there are other things around you can interact with as well. Some of these set pieces are where the game really pushes what a narrative RPG can be, rather than just locking the camera in a front position in front of the person speaking and you pick options. Control is never taken away from you and it keeps you immersed in the game. Even though you can look around, it's very hard not to stay fixed on the center of the action because the animations and the detail in these set pieces are so engaging. The characters in these scenes are all motion captured and you can really tell that detail comes out as you are playing through the game, and the characters are really engaging. Judy, Pan Am and River and others, their personal story and journeys are some of the best content this game has to offer, which is exactly what I was expecting from a game made by the developers of the outstanding Witcher series. Because of these set pieces and the high quality of writing, I wanted to do every side job I could find before I actually finished the game, which is why I made a video to make sure that you guys didn't miss out on some of this content, because it's a shame how easily missable some of these side jobs are. This is one of the key issues that I have with the overall game structure. Most of the major side jobs and their quest chains begin towards the end of Act 2. There is no real indication that there is actually a job there for you to do. You just have to wait for a phone call, which may or may not come in some cases where you are expecting that you should have a quest there. The pacing of when these side jobs become available to you feels completely at odds with the overall narrative of the game. As I talk about the story here, I'm going to get into some light spoilers, mostly around the second act of the game. Very light though, so if you haven't played the game, skip ahead from this section. I'll have some timestamps and all that good stuff in the description, but just a bit of a warning for you guys. The structure of the overall narrative is basically Act 1, find your feet in Night City. Act 2, you are literally given the most real reason to complete the main story as soon as possible. You are going to die. The game constantly reminds you of this fact with the relic malfunctions. You will never forget your main objective in this game is to survive. But then as you progress and start getting really close to finding a solution to this life-saving problem, characters start calling you on the phone asking for help with their meaningless problems. As a role-playing game and role-playing as the V character, you shouldn't be helping these characters. Look, Judy, I'm about to die. I don't have time to go diving with you. There's one story arc that doesn't start until Act 3, which, by the way, Act 3 is just the final mission or two, so you're literally at the very end of the game, and it's about 9 jobs long. It feels almost like there was 2 entirely different teams working on this game. The people responsible for the main story, and then everyone who was responsible for these side jobs and the Ubi-style checklist of icons on your map to tick off. I think I would have have less of a problem with the narrative structure if after the main mission you could return to the world with your relic issue solved and you could do these quests without the pressure of this life-threatening issue for V. Unfortunately though, after the main mission, you are returned to the beginning of the point of no return. So even if you want to continue exploring and completing jobs, which I have done a fair amount of after this point, you are still going to get that relic malfunction every so often. Like, hey, I know you technically finished the game and fixed the relic, but here is 10 seconds of a blurry screen while you're trying to enjoy the world we created for you. The main story is still good, don't get me wrong. I actually really liked the character of Johnny Silverhand as you get to know him throughout the main arc. However, the fact that there is no return point after the final mission leaves you with an unfortunate end to your journey. These are problems that CD Projekt Red themselves had solved with The Witcher 3. The side quests were intricately woven into the main narrative, and there was an end state after the main story, so you could progress those DLCs and the expansions that actually came out for that game. Now, let's take a break and talk about the sound of Night City.
Grumpy guy at reception is the one thing missing.
Have everything you need, ma'am.
I couldn't ask for more.
The soundtrack in Cyberpunk is utterly amazing. The synth combat tracks to the more subtle backing tracks while you're exploring feel so connected to the world that Night City is presenting. It never feels out of place, and my only complaint is that the combat track is occasionally a little too loud and doesn't stop when combat is actually finished, but I'm hoping that gets ironed out in the future. The voice acting is incredible. With some low points, I didn't initially like Keanu Reeves as a voice actor, however, Johnny Silverhand did really grow on me and felt less out of place as the game went on.
On behalf of the staff of the Independent California Motel, I wish you all sweet dreams.
And some of the peripheral NPCs are just okay. The main cast here in the main story and in a lot of the side arcs are all great. Takamura, Judy, Pan Am are just some of the standouts that come to mind, and they're all fantastic characters. The guns have a real weight to their sounds, from the futuristic tech and smart weapons to the more traditional power revolvers and rifles. Even after 100 hours, it's still satisfying to find a new weapon and give it a test run. I think my favorite sounding weapon is probably Johnny's handgun. That thing is beautiful. Speaking of weapons, combat in Cyberpunk 2077 is where the real RPG mechanics of this game lie. Unfortunately, it's not within dialogue options. The versatility in how you choose to tackle combat is pretty unparalleled, from the blunt weapons to bladed weapons to every different type of gun, power, smart and tech, stealthing your way through missions, or just completely ignoring every other aspect of combat and just quick hacking your way through enemies without using any weapon. There is so much freedom in how you choose to interact with combat in this game, and the attributes and perks system is surprisingly deep in whichever option you choose to specialize in, and Cyberware pushes this even further. If you spend the time to level up V, unlock some of the higher level cyberware and attachments, you can be playing a completely different game to other people, and I think that that's one of the best parts about this game. It really makes it stand out amongst the crowd. I've made a ton of different build videos, and I have some more coming as well, so don't worry, because there is so many options and different things that you can do in this game. It is a very deep RPG in how you choose to play the game as V. Now let's talk about the ugly. Up until this point, I think I've been pretty positive overall. Well, it's probably because my experience overall has been very positive and I have enjoyed the game. However, I have experienced a ton of bugs. Everything from floating NPCs disappearing or shape-shifting cars, enemies getting stuck in objects, quests not progressing and having to reload, appearing nude in some scenes, T-posing enemies, UI elements getting stuck on my screen, which I still currently have after reloading the game many times. Enemy AI would sometimes not trigger to the point where I could just walk up to them and shoot them or whatever, and they just did not seem to care. The wanted system and the police just spawning out of nowhere. Even outside of the bugs, you can see through the cracks at some of the features that just are either completely missing or not finished. The traffic system basically doesn't exist, and you can see this regularly when you stop your car and nobody ever moves, or you can see in the distance the fake 2D cars that are just set dressing. There is no barbershop, no way to customize V. Even if you find clothes that you like, there is no transmog system, so you're basically just wearing whatever ugly clothes you find that have the highest armor value. CD Projekt Red have fallen into a similar trap with The Witcher 3 with some of these features at launch, which is a poorly optimized inventory with a ridiculous amount of useless items, being everything from junk to consumables, and a poor way of managing those inventory items. These problems were solved with The Witcher 3 with subsequent patches and a complete redesign of the UI in that game, and it's a shame that these didn't make their way to Cyberpunk 2077 as well. For Cyberpunk 2077, I expected The Witcher 3 with a futuristic cyberpunk coat of paint, and in some respect that's what this game is, or what it could have been in 6 to 12 months when the game was actually finished. It's really a shame that a game with this much potential was so heavily marketed and released before it was ready, and it's almost a parody on the subject matter of the game, being the corpo greed forcing products down our throat for their own monetary gain. I usually rate games on a buy, wait, or pass scale, and Cyberpunk 2077 is an interesting one. If you have a high-end PC, you should buy this game. Despite the issues, there are so many highs that it's an extremely enjoyable experience, and most of the time, the bugs are just funny. They're not really impacting the overall play of the game. But if you're playing this game on console, if you have a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, you simply should pass on this game. I don't think that those experiences are ever going to get to a point where the game is as enjoyable as PC or the other platforms. The next generation consoles, however, especially once the next generation patch happens early next year, then this game is a buy. At least at the moment on the next generation consoles, I would recommend for you to wait. Cyberpunk 2077 shouldn't have been released on the original PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. This should have been a next-gen only title, and it makes me wonder how much smoother the initial launch would have gone if they simply focused on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and the PC, rather than simultaneously releasing on 9 different platforms. Based on CD Projekt Red's track record, in 6 to 12 months, this game is going to be exactly what a lot of us, including me, had hoped for. Cyberpunk 2077 is oozing with charm. It's a shame it hit the spotlight before it was ready, and I cannot wait to see how Cyberpunk 2077 evolves over time. If you're interested in more Cyberpunk content, why not check out my Cyberpunk tips and tricks video, which goes through a lot of beginner tips for you guys if you're just getting started. Please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and on Twitch, where I stream 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday Australian night times. Hope to see you guys there in the next stream. Thank you for watching this video. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.